Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeannie Clark, and on behalf of the WebCheckout team, thank you for joining our second and our last day of our annual User Symposium. Today, we have 3 customer presentations. Each have their own unique WebCheckout story, but I'm sure their stories will resonate with you. So we hope that you'll walk away with a new idea to implement at your institution. All right, so today's presenters, we have Jake Kassen. He'll be our first presenter. Jake is from Boston University, and he is the Technical Operations Manager at the College of Communication. Today, he will share with us how he and his team utilizes the API to create their own reservation portal. Then we have Cecile-Anne from Northwestern University, and she will share how she organizes her inventory in WebCheckout and share some best practices with using bundles, labeling, barcoding her gear, and she'll even show us she'll go into how she trains her students and a view of her learning space. For Media Studio, Cecile is the Instructional Technology Lead at the WCAS Media and Design Studio. And then wrapping up the symposium is Colleyn Bittinger from Cuyahoga Community College. Colleyn is the project manager for the asset management team, and she will showcase how she and her team uses WebCheckout to manage all of the college's static, non-circulating assets. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Jake Kassen. I'm going to make him put the spotlight on him and stop sharing my screen.
Hey. Hi, everyone.
And thanks, Jake, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jake Kassen. I'm the Technical Operations Manager here at BU's College of Communication. Turn on my screen. And kind of quick little overview about us. We're a big place here at BU, 35,000 students. But I work just for the College of Communication. We have about 4,000 students. And pretty much all of those 4,000 are going to interact with WebCheckout in some way or another. Most probably have no idea that they're doing that. And then we're a really pretty small department in my mind, which is great. And we have a lot of autonomy from really from the general BU Information Services and Technology Department. So we can make a lot of our changes pretty quickly. There's not a lot of bureaucracy. And I sort of thank everyone at BU who sort of gives us that freedom. I think we've been able to do a lot with it. So a couple things we've been developing with, it's for really customizing WebCheckout since we first installed it, probably 10 or 11 years ago. Some of that's just out of necessity to make it work with our systems here. But sort of some other reasons why I'm sort of happy to be doing API development. We used to have to customize everything, and every web checkout update we'd have to backport. And it took a lot of time, and it was frustrating. And sometimes web checkout would make changes that sort of didn't jive with us. So when you develop your own patron portals, you can move away from that. So at this point, I don't even really know what the current most up-to-date patron portal is, because every time a new version comes out, we just stick with what we're currently doing and develop against that. And we have different patron portals and different portals for different areas. So I'll show you that in a second. And I think we've been able to make people pretty happy as a result. So the first thing I'm going to show you is actually the thing that we most recently developed, and that's our Studio and Edit Space Reservations portal. We've always been doing edit rooms and studios in WebCheckout, but for a long time, we would use the same exact interface for both equipment and for rooms, and we found that it was really confusing. Students didn't sort of get, they wouldn't know the reserved rooms that way, or it was confusing. You sort of think about rooms and gear in a different mindset. So we wanted to come up with a different interface for rooms, because that's a big part of what we do. So let me go and sort of show you that interface. It's like a calendar view, and it also gives us a lot of options that we wouldn't otherwise have. So this is sort of our main tech web page, and then we go to one of our portals. And this is where everyone begins their sort of their web checkout experience, if you will. And this we're in the works of sort of completely revising as well to make it a little bit more interactive. But what I'm about to show you probably isn't going to change. So we go into our reservation portal, and for rooms, you would obviously click room and studio reservations. And then we can see, these are reservations of already sort of have upcoming. And we go and make a reservation. Now, depending on what user I'm logged in as, this is sort of standard web checkout stuff. I'll have access to different rooms. And all these images and all the text, that's all defined in a pretty simple JavaScript properties file that that myself or one of the developers would modify on the server if needed. It's that part's not particularly interactive. So let's say I want to go and reserve the podcast studio. And we can kind of look through here and say, okay, I want to reserve it on, most of the time students are reserving it, the day before. But in this case, let's say I'll reserve it for Tuesday. And I can see that these green boxes are days that I already have a reservation. Sort of a reminder, this is times that I have. Red is when it's not available. And then blue is when it's available. Another sort of thing that's kind of worth noting in here is that some of our rooms you can reserve 7 days a week because they have card swipe access, and other rooms are really limited to just during the week because we need to have staff here to help the students out to get into those places and to monitor them. And previously that was difficult to configure in the main web checkout interface. There are ways to do it, but it never really worked for us. But what we can do with this, with our own interface, is we can basically say there's certain days that are just grayed out. It's very obvious those days are closed for students for that space. And we can modify times and not have to do that within settings in the main web check-in interface. So if I was a student, again, we try to count the number of clicks, make things really quick for people. So let's say on Wednesday, I want to reserve this room at 11. I click on that. It's just going to pull up the calendar. I only need this for a half hour, do a really quick podcast. We also always require students to reserve, to note what they're reserving, what class they're using it for. That was also a bigger requirement. This student's only enrolled in one class. Submit the reservation, and I'm done. And it's sort of that easy. So a lot of students will just do this on their phone when they're walking over to the college. And then when they get here, to go back into this, and I don't know if the image shows up well, but we have digital signage for all those rooms, and this is just running off a Raspberry Pi, and then we can quickly see who has what reserved, and it's really cut down on a lot of the confusion about these spaces. So that's sort of interface number one on the tour. The next is our general equipment reservations, and that's our depot. We call it Field Production Services, FPS. And it kind of almost looks like the older patron portal from WebCheckout. The way that the API returns the data kind of really lends itself to that interface. But we want to make a lot of changes from what WebCheckout sort of offers just out of the box. And we had to also make a lot of changes during COVID, like everyone else. And a lot of those policies we've come up with that we're able to do in this interface, we're going to keep doing in the future, even once we sort of start moving away from the COVID world, hopefully. So going to go back over to the interface, and this time select the FPS world. Again, I can see what I have sort of upcoming, and this is how I can edit or delete reservations. One of the things we do as well is if you're within a day or so of your reservation, you no longer can edit it. So if the checkout staff has already started to pull the gear and get ready, you can delete it entirely, but you can't go and start switching things around. So make a reservation. And one of the COVID policies that we kind of like now as well is that you can't select your own end time. You can select a date, and then any time before 5 p.m. you can drop the equipment off. And if you're over 5 p.m. you're going to get a late fee, and that's pretty normal. So you select the date. I'm going to stick with the 27th. It automatically updates the end time. And then here's the other big thing, and I think this is pretty fun, is that the checkout staff said, look, we're getting too many people all at one time. And we need to space these things out. Originally, it was for COVID, and now everyone just likes the policy in general. And there are ways to do that in web checkout in the admin interface, but it never really worked for us. So what we do instead is we poll what is currently coming and going, and we only allow a certain number of checkouts. During COVID, it was one, and now we're going to go up to a few more than that for every 10-minute block. And even if other people make reservations, if an administrator makes a reservation, kind of overriding it, that's fine. We'll just block out that block for the students. So from a student's point of view, they can only reserve when the system lets them. So in this case, on that day, on the 27th, we got a lot of activity right around 10 and 11. I'd say classes get out. So my only option right now is 10:30. So I'm going to select that. Again, we're really big on to making students say what class they're reserving it for. And it's going to pull this from what classes the students are enrolled in. And if they want to use it for something else, they can do other, and they can enter in their own project name. And if we have a problem, we can go and approach them. So I'll select my reservation purpose. That's all required. And then I'll go down and go and select some of, I think I was doing good old Matthew's flag. And there's nothing too radical from the normal web checkout. Patron portal, obviously an image, and this can be pulled from anywhere. We allow HTML, so we can kind of customize these fields. This one doesn't have a whole lot, but a lot of times we'll put in links to information about the gear, manuals, other details. Some of the stuff is a little bit more specific than this one. And the next thing we did, which I think is pretty cool, is this heat map type calendar. Now, in this world, in the FPS world, we're only doing reservations by resource type. You can't select, camera number 20. So it doesn't do us any good to tell the students the schedule of individual resources. We actually very much do not want students to come in and say, oh, I want camera number 10, or what do you mean I can't get, that? It looks like it's available in my time block. Instead, what we do is we look and see all the, we sort of compile all those together and find the ones that are going to, and draw this color map depending on if there's a lot that are going out in that time period, or if it's green, that means we have a lot in the shelf. If it's yellow, it means we only have one or two in the shelf. And then if it's red, which nothing in this resource is, that means that, we're basically all booked. So it's it should be pretty clear to the students that, it's a high activity time, or things aren't available at all. And again, the faculty like this as well. We've gotten a lot of good feedback. So I know that starting at 10, these things are going to be there's not a whole lot left, and this checker box is the reservation window that I'm looking at, and it also takes into account the turnaround time, which right now still for COVID times it is a full day. So let's see, I'll go and add one of these to my cart. And because I've already selected the times, I can just click Submit Reservation, and I'm done. The reservation's made. I can make another reservation if I want. Again, it was really important to count the number of clicks and to have everything be on the same page. We didn't want people to have to sort of select their items and then later on select the time and then go back if things weren't available. And you're seeing it on my computer, but this does have a sort of a pretty slick web or phone interface as well. Go to my slides. And then we have digital signage for all these as well. So outside of our equipment area, students can see this, and we're trying to basically make sure that we don't get a lot of clustering in the pickup area. So it will just tell people, hey, your reservation's not for another hour, go get some coffee, come back. Or, Marissa, it's time for your pickup, go right in, get your gear, and move on. So I'm pretty happy with the way this worked. And these signs, again, they're just Raspberry Pis, really pretty inexpensive stuff. And the signs aren't using the API; they're just doing direct database calls. And the last thing I'll show is actually the first thing that we developed specifically with the API. I think this is back when the API was still in beta, and we had a problem where we were switching away from the normal computer lab model to a laptop model. A lot of schools did. and we were going to do the reservations for sort of dongles and or I shouldn't say reservations. We're going to do checkouts for things like dongles and laptops from our computer support department. And we showed them WebCheckout, which we want to put all the stuff in just for tracking, and they said, "No, there's no way we are using this. We are not learning how to use it. This it's way too complex. We're not doing reservations. We're not doing late fees. We just need a way of doing really quick checkouts. Can't you just make it easy for us? We want someone to walk up to the counter. We want to give them the dongle, know that it went to them, and that's it. And if it doesn't come back, we'll track the person down. The same thing with laptops. There's a lot of faculty that are coming into this, and so we said, okay, we can do something about this. The developer Scott Lovejoy did a really great job developing this interface. So I think I have this in Safari. For those of you that might be from the New Jersey, New York area, you might notice this logo that we sort of shamelessly stole. So again, this is what a staff interface would see. Because we're not doing reservations, students are never going to see this. And it's really just a couple full-time staff and then work studies. So it's easy to train. So a student walks up, we know who that person is. We do have a card swipe, or if they didn't have their ID with them, we can just type in their name. I'm going to use one of the staff here, Tristan. We enter in the barcode. So normally I would scan this, but I don't have a scanner with me, so I will just enter in a number. It adds it to the reservation. I could do a class. In this case, it doesn't matter if we do a class. We already signature on file. If I want to write a note, I can, and I click checkout. And that's it. The student walks away. In the early before web checkout, we might physically take their ID, and now we know who they are, and it's very few clicks. So no web checkout admin interface, and then to return it, they can just click on returns and scan the barcode. So again, I'm entering by hand, and it's done. It's checked back in. The person walks away, and we can see other things that are checked out. So a lot of stuff is hard coded in this. I think it just sets the checkout return time for an hour or so, or I should say a day in the future. But because we're not doing reservations, we're not too concerned about that sort of thing. Things like laptops are going to come back within a few hours anyway, and for things like for faculty, if a faculty wants to keep a dongle for a few days, we're not gonna give them a hard time. So that's sort of our first project, but one of the quickest. And a couple of things just about using the API, sort of things you think about before you really get into doing development. It's definitely a lot of work. I spend a lot of time on it, and we have a developer on our staff who also spends a lot of time in this. Every so often there is changes that WebCheckout makes that will break the apps. They've been pretty good about not making too much in terms of like the REST protocol, but there has been times that things have broken, and so every time we do an upgrade, it's a little nerve-wracking, or we need to change something. The documentation is good, could be better, and you really need to sort of commit to being able to change your Apache configuration. And we use Shibboleth here at BU, and as web checkout is developed, they really kind of expect you to only be using the system for web checkout, and so we have to make a lot of changes ourselves. And there's been times in which that's been a little difficult, and we don't get a whole lot of support on the API side or the server side for that. But we've been able to do a lot. Other projects that we've done that I sort of won't go into too much. The first thing we did, and this dates back 10 years and it's still working, is just a detailed view of what reservation or what resources are going out when. It kind of mirrors what we used to even have on paper way back when, which really helps just from an admin side. A pin changer, so sometimes we have work studies who need to work somewhat independently in the evening if one of the staff needs to leave, and we'll assign them a new pin number just for that night. So if they need to do an override, they can, but normally they don't have override privileges to to violate policies or override policies. And then late fees were another big thing that we did, which I think works pretty well. Again, way back when we would do things with cash and checks, and that sucked. And now we have it so that when a student has a late fee, they'll see it right on that dashboard, and they can pay it through BU's payment processor, and it will send them back. And then one of our admins can go and just click approve if everything looks good. So it's really seamless for the students. They're happy, we're happy. Hopefully it makes people not want to return things late. Although it's so easy, I think some people just say, well, whatever. It's an extra day, $20. What do I care? And that's it. That was my very quick run through. I can answer any questions that people have.
Jake, that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I actually jot down some notes of things that maybe we could take back as some improvements to our portal. I really like the heat map view that you have for your resource type. That's great.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, and this is, and I'm friends with everyone with WebCheckout, so, a great company, but a lot of times we just, we would submit requests for changes, and either our stuff is so specific, or some of these things just weren't being developed, and so we've been able to say, okay, let's just do it. Let's do it ourselves. So I'm happy that we had the ability to do that. And I'd say for other people that are in the same boat, there is options.
How long would you say it took you to develop the portal as well as the quick checkout? I know that you said that was your first project.
There, I can get back to that. It's the developer I would ask. Unfortunately, right now is in prison. It's a good thing. He's becoming a public defender, and so he quit his job, and so he is right now interning in Pennsylvania. I was waiting for an opportunity to use that joke. He's a great guy. It definitely took him a while. Early on, especially during the beta API days, there wasn't a whole lot of documentation. So I'd say that a couple weeks. The amount of code in this is really pretty minimal. It's really minimal. I was just looking at this morning, but it took him a fair amount of time to kind of wrap his head around it. One thing I'd say is that there's the REST protocol, but there isn't really a JavaScript library or anything to utilize this. So one of the things he had done is he wrote a JavaScript library that kind of allowed us to call a lot of our own functions. And he definitely spent a lot of time on that, and that's made things a lot easier. Some of the other interfaces that we have kind of relies upon that, but it's not turnkey. If anyone's thinking it is, you're going to be mistaken.
Thanks for that. And Jake, how long have you personally been managing or using WebCheckout?
I think we originally started talking about it in 2008. Maybe, I think we signed on in 2009. A lot of things we've done too with that, like that resource view, that was one of these things where we used to be much more scattered in the college, and we'd have all these different departments that were really very separate. And we had some pushback from different people. So it was trying to come up with, okay, how can we replicate the view that you created in your own database using web checkout data, so that you would hopefully be able to accept the change a little better. Anything else?
Jake did provide his email, so if anyone wants to contact him for consulting, for paid consulting, just kidding. But thank you for sharing your information there, Jake.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jake. And now we will turn it over to Cecile from Northwestern University. Cecile?
Thanks, Jeannie. Hi, everyone. Sorry for my backlight. I figured since I would be in the office, I would actually sit at the circulation desk. And of course, there's windows behind me. First off, though, I am going to show a little video which kind of shows what kind of equipment we check out. I'm in a unit called the Media and Design Studio, which is in Weinberg, which is one of Northwestern's schools. It's the liberal arts college. And we mainly support just the humanities classes. So we have a kind of different equipment pool than a normal film school would have or things like that. So I'm just going to share my screen and play this video.
Hello, and welcome to the Media and Design Studio.
Do we have inviting places, meeting spaces, high quality gear for different use cases? Of course.
Our supported humanities classes don't need to worry about equipment, training, or other resources to help students and faculty make media projects.
We have different cameras for different needs.
We've got audio gear for making podcasts.
And oral histories or sonic art?
Of course.
We've got all the resources to turn an idea into something the world can see and hear.
You can take advantage of our teleconferencing equipment for classes and long-distance learning, too.
Our labs are loaded with pro software to finish projects efficiently. All of this is available to students,
So long as your class is registered with MADS.
So does the Media and Design Studio support classes and students with gear, tech, and training?
Of course. Visit our website to check out our gear or book some support. See you soon. You guys, all here on one day? What are the odds?
Okay, so as you can see from the video, a lot of it is consumer level or prosumer level equipment. We don't have a lot of big cameras, big lights, or anything like that, but the classes we support get to use all of the equipment that we have. So what that means is our main patron pool is maybe like 20 some odd people a quarter. And then we have on campus, on the Evanston campus at Northwestern, we have around 2,800 students, and then plus the faculty and staff. So our patron load, because we also check out dongles and things like that, is much, much higher. So we have to do a lot of things with authorizations and groups and things like that. But also, since our main patrons are humanities classes that aren't necessarily trained in how to use equipment, and staff and faculty who don't know what they're asking for, when we were building our inventory, we really had to keep that in mind, is that people don't know what they want, and how do we provide the stuff for them without having to answer so many questions. So added to this is our unit is on the School of Communications instance. So the School of Communications at Northwestern owns the instance, and then we're just organizations within it. So when we are building our inventory, we also had to have all of our resource types include our organization as part of all of our resource types. And now I have another sort of mini organization under me. And so as they're building out their inventory now, they're also putting in their little art theory and practice, so ATP, in front of all of their resource types. I'm going to give you a quick tour of my space. It's not very big, but it will help you see some of the things I'm going to talk about. Okay. So I'll try and be really steady. So this is our lab. We have things blocked off right now because of COVID, but you can see from you can see my setup. This is all of the stuff I'm going to show you later, but we have 2 stations for students, and then we have 2 barcode scanners, and we use a Brother PT9800. I probably shouldn't have covered it with everything to print out our labels. Most of our equipment is just in these cabinets. Since we have some small equipment, we have these little trays that I put wheels on, and we just kind of drag them out like there. And then all of our cabinets are also labeled. So cabinets are locations in our inventory as well. So you can see it's labeled large drawer number 2. And then on the top, you can see it says what's in it. So all of our spaces are like that. And then we have some old equipment as artwork. And now you can see my Zoom. Yay. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this. So this was my very quick tour. And I dropped everything. So hello again. So yesterday, Brittany was really, really thorough in talking about advanced import. And so I was really pleased to see, though, she she suggested that instead of editing in Excel, you edit your CSV files in Google or something, or a text editor like that. And so in 2016, I was doing that. And let me just pull up my screen again. Sorry for all the switching, but here we go. I'm going to share my screen again. And so this is a file that I created by exporting the resource type and resources. So this was back in 2016 when you had to import 2 separate files. So this may be a little bit old school for some people, but we started with WebCheckout in 2014. That's when I got trained. And then we implemented in 2015 in the library. So my space that you just saw, it was new in 2016. So we were in a temporary swing space from 2014 to 2016. So we had like our equipment kind of in boxes and weird places. And we were using a system called Voyager, which is a library like Ex Libris, mainly for books and media, so not for equipment, obviously. And so switching to WebCheckout was amazing for us. But we didn't really handle our inventory import very well, and so we thought that because we were moving, because we were going to have to pack everything up, this is the perfect time to just sort of start from scratch and build our inventory again. And I probably shouldn't have started on this page. So we had a summer plan with all of the people that were working with me, post-move checklist, but training is really what I want to talk about here. So it was a 2-day training before we even started, and I had 3 student workers who knew nothing about the equipment. They only knew as much as what they had to do on Voyager. They didn't care to know about the equipment because they weren't film majors. They didn't see a point to any of it because they weren't going to use it past when we were doing this. And so I had to like overcome that hump as well. So the students not knowing much, and then my student workers not knowing much, and also like thinking that the faculty and staff and students that were checking things out also wouldn't know much. So day 1 was just, this is a Google Doc. And then day 2 was really about the nitty gritty about web checkout. So we built this all out, terms, and we kind of built this Google Doc together. Because as we started inventorying, we're like, oh, maybe we should add this so that it would be a living document that people could use in the future. And even though this is super old, this is from like over 5 years ago, I do send this document out to people that I'm onboarding who are about to build their inventories as well. So it's just sort of, because the fields and everything like that, they may have changed a bit as WebCheckout has released new versions, but all of the data that we entered is still valid and useful. It might just have a different name for the field. So this was just, a plan of attack. I'm not going to go into it too much, but for every field, we wrote out rules. And so what Brittany said yesterday about standardizing and like creating a standardized attack to making your inventory, I cannot stress that enough. It was so useful because we were all collaborating on the same document as well. So if at the same time, so we wanted to make sure that we were not stepping on each other's toes and that we wouldn't have to ask each other for every single thing, like, oh, what should I name this cable? What should I like, where should this go in a hierarchy and stuff like that. So we really defined all of the fields and then talked about together, like whether or not things were optional, whether or not how you would write things. Are you using like a hashtag number if it was serialized, or are you naming it, or things like that? So we were really very deliberate about how we filled out our inventory. And then the student workers could always check this page and see, okay, that's what we decided. And so they would go through. So this is just a plan of attack. It's got dates. This is an old one, but anyway, so that is the training. And so that was only one day. It took one day to go through this. And then the first day after that was practice for all of the student workers. So they would inventory something into these 2 spreadsheets that we had exported. So everything was on the same Google Doc file. Okay, I can't move it over. So we have the resources and then resource types. I'm sorry, resources, and then the resource types was the previous one. So the thing that was really useful for us was also, will this appear in PIR? This is how you know it's very old, because we're referring to it as PIR instead of patron portal. And so we would also have the students create images for all of our resource types. And then I actually preferred having the 2 documents as it was in the old times, because you could really see the hierarchy. Since I like to nest, I'm a huge fan of folders, like folders and subfolders and things like that. And so it was easier to see when something was nested under a parent, for me at least. And so we could add in pictures and things like that. So this is not what we would then upload, but we would then take these and then convert it to a CSV file and upload the CSV file after deleting all of our little notes to self in the top. But I also wanted to point out, though, it was really helpful in our move because I created a bunch of locations. And so I actually had locations for boxes. And so these are our new locations. And so as we were building this page, actually that would be in the resource types. I'm sorry, I keep on going back and forth. Everyone must be getting a little dizzy. But here we go. So here are all of my locations as resource types. And so you can see these are Kresge locations. So Kresge is the building we are in now. And then these pink ones were when we were moving. So we had like moving crate number 8. And so we could easily, while we were packing, we knew where it was. And as we unpacked, we actually we gave it a new location, and then we updated this Google spreadsheet with where it was now. So it was really helpful for our move, in addition to redoing all of our inventory in this way. Let's see. So another thing about our resources is our barcodes. So we were dealing with a lot of old inventory with like ID numbers from like scraps of paper and like old audits from like 20 years prior. And so what we did when we developed barcodes, and I probably wouldn't do this in the future, is we actually use the ID numbers from our old inventories as our barcodes. So we used to be called the MMLC, and so 6652 is MMLC on a phone. And all of our barcodes from Voyager were 10 digits long. And so we just kind of made new barcodes using that system. So I actually would not recommend that. I would recommend getting a barcode generator, because then you have like 3 items that you might have just inventoried that have the same like very similar barcodes, which can be very confusing if your scanner is down and you have to type. And then if you're one off, then you've accidentally checked out like Zoom number 3 as opposed to Zoom number 4. So that is another thing. And as we changed our name to Media and Design Studio, we kind of have a history with our barcodes in terms of date, because now it's 6294, which is MADS on a phone. So yeah, the barcodes, I think that was kind of strange. Okay. So I talked a little bit about naming. And so having the rules for naming things was also a high priority, so that my student workers didn't have to ask me about how to name things. And so naming cables was a really big thing. And one thing that I would actually recommend doing if I had to do it over again, I made our cable names very, very technical. Like I didn't even call it what someone would call it. So like just say like a Thunderbolt cable. I would say no, it's like an Apple display port. So I would actually not use the colloquial name. And I kind of regret that, because the other thing that you should keep in mind is that your inventory is what is in your patron portal and for your resource type. And so what you name your resource types, especially knowing that my patrons don't know things, I wish I had been a little bit more colloquial with how I address this. I am really happy with my hierarchy of how people navigate through our like from parent to child, because that makes more sense to a patron than it does to me. Like, because I would, if I were to do it for myself, I would organize my equipment in terms of thing, like this is audio, it's a microphone, etc. But then with my patrons, I had to sort of organize it in terms of usage. So whereas a microphone could be used for both events and for production, I really did have to separate it out into like, no, this microphone is set for like use with a PA or use in by plugging into a room, and then this microphone is strictly for production. So that was kind of a strange thing for me to wrap my head around. But naming, I really would not name things VGAF, mini display M, etc. That was just a poor choice for me. But I kind of wish I named the resource that, as opposed to the resource type. So that is something that I would not do again. Even our pictures had rules too. So we had creating the pictures, all of these rules. I'm not going to go into it, but I'll just show you the result of those pictures. So we have like this cable. So I would have my student workers actually Google all of these schematics. And so all of our cables that we have pictures for have a picture of the cable and then what each end looks like, just to clarify for our patrons. And I'm going to go really quickly into labeling, which has a whole nother thing. And this is what I love to do, is label. So there are all these rules for labeling as well, but the gist of it is unserialized items are yellow and serialized items are white. And then kits and kits have larger labels so that they know just to scan the kit and not the individual items. And so let's see. So this is just, like I said, we use the P-Touch. And so we just have a bunch of templates for all of the different labels that we create. And excuse me. And so the student will just double click on this on a label, print it out, and then not save. And so that was really the the shocking thing for the students was that I told them just don't save it. So then the template is there. So they're a template in the loosest term. And then let me switch cameras again because I'm going to stop my share for a second. So back to my phone. So we have this binder. Is it sharing?
Not yet.
Oh.
It says that you started screen sharing, but I'm
going to restart that then. I was confused why I could not see it. Okay. Sorry about this. Okay. Okay, so we have this binder of barcodes. And so as people were inventorying and creating images, we would print out these kinds of like grocery store binders. So you could search for things by bundle. So I don't know if you can see the tab here. So like the bundles or by item itself, like that. And then they're cross-referenced with what bundle these are in. Oh. So let me just show you some labels because this is the fun part. So I like to name things. I'll put them like this. Give them names. And I like to do it alphabetically. So this is Tom, and then this is Sloan. And so there's a theme. I don't know if anyone knows what this theme is, but it's John Hughes characters. So all of our hard drives are named after John Hughes characters. Our tripods are named after trilogies. Our Zooms are named after cars. So this is Jeep. And so this is something that I like to do and like to give the students ownership of. So I let them come up with naming conventions. And so this was a way of really like sort of getting them interested in naming things and like learning what the equipment is and like, oh, it's a Zoom, it's called a Zoom, like what goes Zoom, like, oh, cars go Zoom. So so all of these names were decided on and by my student workers. So I'll go really quickly back to the other screen. So back to this, we have this tab called naming conventions. And so every single possible naming convention that my student workers came up with, and they still to this day come up with naming conventions. It just goes on and on and on. Like there's so many. If anyone has suggestions, I'm open to it. But instead of naming things sequentially like 1, 2, 3, we really got into naming things with themes. Even our computers in our labs are named after things. And then since they're alphabetical, you still get that sequential aspect. But what I found was that it really gave the students some sort of like legacy. And so they really got into creating these naming conventions. And then I feel like I'm running out of time. So the last thing I want to talk about is really just bundling and putting things in kits, because that was really the biggest thing that Web Checkout provided for us and our patrons that don't know anything, is that we were able to put things in bundles and kits. And so when people actually check things out, it is, they cannot actually see individual parts of a bundle. So if they want a camera, they can only select the bundle itself and not a singular camera. So when they go on to Web Checkout, they see this instead. So, and then they see all the parts that are part of the bundle. And my students got really into the idea of bundling because they don't remember to do it very often. And so I quiz them. I do an annual evaluation, and then the first like half of the quiz is really just watching them do checkouts, and then seeing if they remember to select bundles when that is the actual thing that they're supposed to select. It's even in our slate that the students wrote. That's another thing I have the students do, is actually do the documentation for their fellow students. And so we always say bundle, when possible, select add mads bundle, because it makes it easier on them because they don't know what accessories to include, and then it makes it easier on the patrons when they're making reservations. And then finally, I'm just going to share this here. We had socks made, so they say bundle up, and it's all because of web checkout. And this was our sock. It's we have like a bell that's shaped like a pear, and there's a little coronavirus, but the bottom says bundle up. So that's my biggest like love of web checkout, is the fact I can bundle. So that's it.
Thank you so much for that, Cecile. I think it would be so fun to work with you. I do really appreciate the level of detail and documentation, because with so many of you all, you're training staff every semester, or every quarter, or so frequently that it's become so redundant. You have to have good documentation, so it makes it easier to train your ever-changing staff there. And the labeling is really nice. I like how you do the side and top label of your drawers there. So I wonder how many people are ordering new pulls for their cabinets so they can have that labeling there, but that's very nice. Any questions for Cecile or comments? I see some comments in the chat there. How large is your staff? How many student staff do you typically have?
I have 13 to 18, depending on what quarter it is. But also my retention for my students, when I hire them, if I hire them as a first year, it's like 95% retention. I've only had to fire 2 people in my, oh God, I've been here like 15 years. Right? So I've only had to fire like 2 people, and even if people leave to work in a lab or something, or go study abroad, they always come back. So I feel like that's and
That's
they're like,
great.
we really love web check. You cannot imagine when we switched to web checkout how much like those students loved it, because the system we were on before was just so terrible for what we were doing, and like they love web checkout.
That's great. Good. I had a question. It just left my mind there. Oh, I do really, do you have your student staff also do they actually do create your import files as well? So it's not
Yes.
just you. I like that.
I do.
And I do like that you have them involved in the naming of it. It's creative, it's fun, and like you said, it gives them a little bit of like accountability and ownership.
And motivation really is like low, because they come in with very little interest in what the equipment is, because it's not very exciting equipment. It's not like a sexy camera. It's like, oh, that I can buy that at Best Buy sort of camera. So it's hard to get them really excited about it.
Yeah. There is a question, and actually I'm going to turn it over to you, Cecile, if you can answer this. I think this is Laura, but Savan chats, I saw bundle versus kits on your Excel sheet. Can you explain what the difference is?
Yes, I can definitely explain that. So just on the base level, a kit is a collection of serialized items that are grouped together. And a bundle is still a group of like individual resources, but it can also include unserialized items. And so for a bundle, that would for me be something that has like an SD card or batteries or things like that, where you wouldn't want to like have to wait for, oh, battery 4 is still charging. I can't give out this camera package without that specific battery. And so and also when I bundle things, since we have a surplus of certain items, of those unserialized items, if somebody wants an extra battery, or well, I give them 2, but if somebody wants like a 3rd or 4th battery, that's not a problem. And so but it jogs the patron's memory that, oh wait, I might need power, or oh yes, an SD card, and like, oh, do you have a tripod? So there's all of these things that they don't necessarily know like how to ask for them. And then and so grouping in general is really, really useful for me. And then for kits, that's usually if there's something that is, I mean, everything there always travels together. And so with a kit, you only scan the kit. So you also create a resource for the kit itself. You're also creating a resource for the bundle itself as well. But when you bundle, or I'm sorry, a resource type for the bundle, but when you select it in web checkout, all of the individual items still come up to be scanned. And then with a kit, you just have to scan the one barcode.
Yeah, that was a good description, but just to summarize, kits, they're specific individual resource items that always travel together. And as Cecile mentioned, you scan out one barcode for a kit that includes all of the items that are together. Whereas bundles, there are several different resource types that are grouped together. So if you have, large orders that always include, 20 different items, you can bundle them together, one button, add all 20 items. And then you can even remove some of the items in a bundle. Kits, you cannot. And then at the point of pickup, your operators are just scanning out the particular item to fulfill that bundle. And then Brad asks, how many items do you circulate during an academic year, September to May?
So we're September to June. And it really depends since we only support specific classes. So I would say we circulate around like to 20 people, and then they maybe check out things maybe 4 or 5 times each quarter. So it's 20 people per class that would be checking out. And so we can support anywhere between like 3 to like 8 classes per quarter. So it really depends on what classes are happening. And it doesn't necessarily, I can't really say it happens annually. Like I couldn't put a number to it annually because there's sometimes like the teacher takes sabbatical and then they're like, oh, I'm not teaching that documentary class anymore or something like that. So it's hard to really say, but I would say, okay, fine. I'll say like around 100 items per quarter. So we're on the quarter system. So like 300 per year. So not that much. We don't get, and that's actually just production equipment because I don't count dongles and things like that in my calculation. I should really run more reports. When you asked that yesterday, Jeannie, I was like, I don't do those reports as much.
Lucky for you, I have monthly reports and I wish I could automate them, but I can't. I'm always creating a pivot table every month to run our numbers. But that was a good plugin. We've got data feeds and you can use your data visualization tools to run these reports automatically. Any other questions for Cecile? All right, great. Thank you so much, Cecile. And last but certainly not least, finishing up our presentations and day 2 of, or finishing up our user symposium, actually. I'm going to turn it over to Colleyn Bittinger from Cuyahoga Community College. Colleyn?
Hey guys, thanks Jeannie. I'm Colleyn. I'm with Tri-C in Cleveland, Ohio. If you didn't hear in the beginning, if you hear roosters screaming, those are my coworkers, so don't mind them. I'm much less techie than Jake and Cecile, so I just have a little PowerPoint to share with you guys today. Let's see, here we go. If I can pull this up. Here we go. So, like I said, I'm with Tri-C. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. Can you guys see my screen? Okay, cool. So we are a multi-campus institution. I have a little map here with our big, kind of our big stakes just to show you kind of what we're doing up here. We have our West Shore campus, our West campus, East campus, and then up here is our Metro campus. So those are our 4 big guys, and we have multiple satellite campuses throughout Northern Ohio. And then this district office is my home. We're right up by Lake Erie for our baseball fans. My office is right across from Progressive Field where the Cleveland Indians play. So that's kind of a fun atmosphere when it's game time and all that. So Tri-C, it's, as I said, the district office is my home, but I'm everywhere. I track our static assets throughout the college. So I'm here, there, and everywhere. Not in one place. We use WebCheckout a little bit differently in my department. What I do is 50% asset tracking just on a day-to-day basis of what's coming in, what's going out, where's it going, where's it moving to. I do a lot of physical inventories, asset disposal, and then miscellaneous projects throughout the college. So that's what my position looks like. With WebCheckout, though, we have a little bit of an ebb and flow in my daily tasks that I keep in mind. I have to think of if we have capital projects going on, if I have physical inventories going on, and how do those all kind of go together and work within WebCheckout, within each campus and each little pocket and each department. So it's all kind of like a continuous cycle going on in my position. So basically what I do for these static assets is I pull weekly PO reports, which tell me, and we'll show you what's coming into college. So if you can see that, it has what's ordered, what's the PO, where is it coming from, what is it, price, all that, which is important to know as far as who's getting it. Is there a capital project going on? Do we have a new building coming in? Do we have new computers coming in? So I do this weekly PO report and then come to WebCheckout. Oops, I think I'm getting ahead of myself here.
We're still viewing your PowerPoint screen. I it sounds
Am
like
I still in my PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Let's see.
The screen that you're sharing.
Are you still seeing my PowerPoint?
Yes.
I did say that I'm not techie, so let me see. Am I back to ebbs and flows?
Yep, on your PowerPoint, yes.
Okay. Well, I'll just go from here then, I guess. I don't know why it's not coming up. So basically, back to the PO report, since I don't know why my other screen isn't showing. I'm sorry. Let's see. So basically with that, I'll go back to that. With the PO reports I'm running, I want to know, keep in mind the equipment. What program is it going to? Is it AV equipment? Is it high dollar equipment? What type of equipment's coming into the college? And then through that, I'm going to decipher what's happening with this equipment. So with that, I have this little, over here, we have around 100 resource types in WebCheckout. So when I'm running these reports, I'm wondering, is it AV equipment? Is it IT equipment? Is it lab equipment for biology? Is it lab equipment for chemistry? Things like that that I'm keeping in mind as far as the tracking goes. And that falls under, we have 74 different departments, like I mentioned, biology, chemistry, nursing, IT. Through all of these departments, I need to decipher, okay, where is this gonna live and where is it gonna go? And through deciphering those, we have nearly 13,500 resources living in WebCheckout under asset management. Meaning all 13,500 of those live under some department. And at any given time, I need to be able to go in and see where these assets are. So that goes into the physical inventory, which is something that I perform every 2 years. And since I can't, let's see, can you see this screen. Let me see.
You should be able to, oh, now we can see your
Can you see?
Excel. Your Excel.
Okay, yes. So
Yes.
unlike Cecile, she was mentioning Google Docs. I'm an Excel person. I live in Excel. That's where I am all the time. This is how I track my physical inventory. I have all of my departments over here on the left side, and I always keep track of when am I completing physical inventories. So I have my departments. I go with my initial contact date. Am I completing these physical inventories and when were they completed? So that way I can always refer back to my sheet as far as where am I on this 2-year cycle of physical inventory. So the ebb and flow is always, you know, running together these daily or the weekly PO reports and physical inventory, keeping in mind where am I with both of those things and how are they kind of jiving together. So with that, what I want to track is, this is probably a familiar screen to everybody else, are all of these specific specific categories of everything that's being purchased within the college. So for resource, everything gets a name, what it is that we're buying. We don't generally name with serial numbers except for IT equipment. I am the one person who lives in asset management besides my boss. So I like to be specific as far as, okay, this is Ford F-150, for example, for our plant ops department. So for resource, I would put Ford F-150 and then the VIN number. And then all of the rest of these I will get from the purchase order to be able to have all the specific information. So at any given time, I can log into WebCheckout and see, okay, this Ford F-150 is part of our plant ops department at our Western campus. So I can go in, type in the resource, type in Western campus for the home location, and then I should be able to, at any point, pull that up to get whatever information I need. And since this is a weekly report that I run, what I'm doing is reaching out to each department that's ordering the equipment and asking them, hey, I see that you purchased this equipment. Can you please provide me serial number, home location, make, model, and any other specific information pertaining to these assets that I would need to put into WebCheckout in order to track it correctly and with the most information possible. So going back to that, these two weekly reports and physical inventory are kind of an ebb and flow of how things get tracked. Physical inventory, like I said, happens every 2 years. Of course, it's an ongoing cycle with having 74 departments across multiple campuses. I'm here, there, everywhere. Some campuses have, you know, chemistry here, not on this campus, or there's chemistry at 3 of the 4 campuses. And each chemistry department is getting its own physical inventory. So that's why I like to keep the tracking sheet of the inventory. So then when I go into WebCheckout, which, oops, did I closed out, huh? Can you see my WebCheckout?
Yes.
Okay. When I go into WebCheckout, I can come in. Maybe not. I can go into my different departments and say, I'm looking for biology. I know it's been almost 2 years since I've done an inventory on biology. I can come in, find it, organized by the home location, and then I can see the latest inventory. Or less, I'm sorry.
The result column.
Is that a result? It should be, oh, there we go. I'm sorry. It should be up there. This is what I live in. Last inventoried on. So I can see that at West Campus in my biology department, I did a physical inventory in January of 2020. So I know that I'm good on those. So that should be up to date then in my personal physical inventory tracking sheet. So the ebbs and flows are kind of always working together. I know that in my weekly PO reports, I have so many things coming in that need to be tracked. And then every so often, we used to do a physical inventory by resource date. I'm sure that you might be familiar with the last inventoried on field or inventory now field. We used to do it by resource per department, which just got a little crazy because you would have some resources that were inventoried last November, then you would have some resources inventoried 2 months ago. So we just changed it to a standard 2-year physical inventory. And that also helps with capital projects as far as things coming in and out to make sure everyone's on the same page with what's living where. And as far as living in WebCheckout, I'm the only one besides my boss who has access to these resources in WebCheckout. We're the only two that have access. So nobody else is touching them besides me or my boss. So basically, once an asset is created in WebCheckout through my weekly PO report, I can either do my physical inventory. At that time, we'll say, yes, we still have this equipment, and then I'll go into WebCheckout, I'll update the inventory date, say put a special note in there, which I have internal resource notes, which is a custom field that we put in with this new version of WebCheckout when we re-implemented. So I will put in a note that says, yes, this is still living in WebCheckout per physical inventory of fiscal year 21. And then I'll update it. We'll be good to go until the next physical inventory. If the department says, no, we don't have this any longer, I will decommission it and then go in. The same thing, we always keep notes on every single thing. So there is a paper trail, you could say, of what's happened with certain assets. So if they say, no, we got rid of it, it wasn't working any longer, I'll go in, okay, perfect. This resource is no longer a part of this department, and then decommission it. After that, if I'm touching a resource, it's because somebody is emailing me saying, hey, Call, we have these computers. They were living in this space. We had a renovation. This is no longer a room, and these computers have moved to X space. So, which is our IT department. They'll reach out to me and let me know a new home location. I'll update it, put in our resource notes, resource updated per IT move, et cetera, inventory it so it has that timestamp and date stamp on it, and move on. Otherwise, the only time I'm touching assets in WebCheckout, besides updating the inventory date or home location, is if someone contacts me from a department and says, hey, we had this equipment, it's no longer functioning. Can you find someone else to use it? Can you find a different department? Can you find an outside organization to use it? Which is always our first goal in asset management, is to repurpose. However, if they can't be repurposed, we'll decommission it. I'll go into WebCheckout and decommission in our notes, put whatever reason that it's being decommissioned for, and then send it to decommission. So basically what is decommission is when we're pulling it from our inventory. So it's really quite nice in WebCheckout that we have this. So we have our paper trail of where things go if they're not living actively in a department. So I can come into my checkout center, decommissioned equipment, to find a resource, and I can pull up every single thing that we have had living in web checkout that is no longer living. So a lot of these you can see have serial numbers for their resource name, which are mostly computers. So I could go into any of these and we'll say, okay, it was a Microsoft Pro, it got decommissioned. However, we still have this unit. The nice thing is that I can bring this back into living equipment and update the home location as if it was never decommissioned. So it's nice to have this feature. We always have that paper trail. If someone comes and says, hey, I'm looking for all of these certain Microsoft products, for example, all of these Microsoft Pros, do you have them in your inventory? I can always, if I can't find them in my living inventory, I can come into the decommissioned equipment and then bring them back to life. But there's always that paper trail of, yes, we've had it. You can look at our internal resource notes and you can see, well, it was decommissioned on this day per IT for whatever reason. So that's a really nice feature. So going back, that's kind of the life cycle of the assets in web checkout on my part, as far as what happens with them. I'm not going in every single day and updating and moving and checking in, checking out like a lot of people do with web checkout. I've checked out maybe a handful of things, and those were IT loaner laptops, which is not something that I do very often. So all of this equipment basically sits in there until it needs inventoried or it needs a new home location, or it's not part of our inventory any longer. So basically what happens at that point is I can go into into web checkout, go through any of these fields as far as looking for a resource, looking for a specific department, home location. I can find any of our assets at any point by searching any of these fields in web checkout, and then export the generated file, update whatever I need to update for a specific resource, and then re-import it into web checkout. So it's really nice. Brittany spent many hours of going over this with us last summer when we had a re-implementation. We went from version 4.4.1 to version 12. So this was a big step for us, and getting all of these new documents and different ways of organization together, it's really made everything quite nice to be able to just import these simply. As Cecile mentioned, you used to have to import multiple documents at once. Now we just go in, search for whatever it is that we're looking for, export one file, and then re-import it. So basically, to summarize all of my mumbo jumbo here, for tracking the static assets for Tri-C, everything's organized by campus, home location, and department. At any time, I should be able to go into these departments and find what I'm looking for. As I have listed here, you can search for any specific asset by serial number, PO number, manufacturer, model type, home location, and be able to find exactly what you're looking for at any time. As I mentioned before, the last inventoried on and internal resource notes are like the staple of my usage of web checkout. So every single time I go in to add a new resource, to update a resource, to do anything with a resource, those are my two big fields. Keeping that trail of what I did exactly with these assets, when did I do it? So next time I'm in there, I can find, okay, this day, it said that we took this out of inventory, or on this day it moved locations. So we always have that trail of what's going on with each asset. Since my sharing didn't really work in the beginning, that kind of takes me to the end of my big blabbering asset presentation. I am happy to go over this more in depth, more thoroughly, if anybody would like. I don't know if you can see my email address at the bottom there. I know it's not as fun as checking things in and out and interacting with people. I don't really have the interaction with students, faculty, like most people using WebCheckout. I'm just kind of on my own terms here. But I'd be happy to talk with anybody who's maybe interested in tracking assets, static assets in WebCheckout. So that's about it. If anybody has any. Oops.
Thank you so much, Colleen. That was
Are
really
you there?
important.
I'm sorry. I don't know what here. Where are you, Jeannie?
I
don't know.
that's a very
Okay. Yeah, here we go.
existential question. Where am I? Where really am I?
I know. I wonder that all the time. I'm always wondering, where am I?
That's great. How long have you been in this role with Tri-C managing assets?
Just for 2 years. So I'm just about to hit my 2-year mark in asset management. I was here. I got hired in end of July, August of 2019. So then COVID hit in 2020, in the spring of 2020. So a lot of my beginning experience with WebCheckout was very quick, just trying to learn it all. We did in, I guess it was January of 2020, start talking with Brittany about our re-implementation, going from version 4.4.1 to version 12. So this whole past year has been spent with Brittany, training us on this new version, teaching us everything that we need to know about getting out of the Stone Age with WebCheckout into this new version 12, customizing what we want, what we're looking for, and going from there. So this has all been, you know, a lot of learning over the last year with WebCheckout.
And when you're managing all the 13,000 equipment, you and your manager, are you the only one performing the physical inventory, the one that you do every twice a year?
Yes. So it's just me. We do have staff and faculty who use WebCheckout, like Cecile, like other people who are checking information in and, equipment in and out, and they're touching their own, but we have all of those controls set up. So they're in their own space on WebCheckout, doing their own thing. I am the only one managing our 13,000 resources in asset management. So it's my responsibility to schedule through the different campuses, the different departments, when are we performing these physical inventories? You know, I'll print off my whole entire spreadsheet from WebCheckout, my inventory list, go into these departments and say, okay, it says you have all of this stuff. Show me, where is it? And go from there.
That's a lot of manual labor. I mean, I know all of us on this call, you're all performing a physical inventory, but many have teams to do it. And this is all you driving around to different campuses and departments.
It's fun. I love my job. It's fun. You get to see different people on different campuses. You get to, you know, you're not in one spot all the time. You're here, there, everywhere. It was very intimidating at first. Like, I don't know who do I contact in biology at West Shore campus? Who, you know? So you start building these relationships. It becomes really easy. You see this equipment coming in through these reports. You know, this equipment's coming to biology at West Shore. So okay, I can email them. I know it's coming. If they don't come back to me, or get back to me, I'll highlight it and bother them again in a week or two. You know, hey, where's your equipment? Is it there? I need to know exactly where it is.
Sure. And I think our customer base is pretty split. A majority use, I mean, the application is called WebCheckout. So a majority of our customers are using it for check-ins and checkouts, but as they start using it for that purpose, they see, oh, this is a database to manage our inventory. So why not use it to manage our installed equipment? And using that home location field, you really know where exactly that equipment is, whether it's in a building or in a drawer.
Yeah.
So you know when you're performing that inventory, exactly where it's located.
Yep.
Great. Any questions for
It's
Colleen
great.
about asset management or raising roosters?
That's my specialty. The raising farm animals is my specialty, so I can definitely answer questions on that.
You can track your inventory, your stock, your livestock in WebCheckout.
That's right. That's right.
We can open up for discussion. Cecile says she has lab equipment installed and in use instead of assigning circulating equipment as a checkout center. Yep, she has her own checkout center
Yep.
for non-circulating for static assets.
It's really nice. It's just everything is so organized. The fact that you can label, put so much detail in how you're entering the information.
Right.
You should be able to find it by any means possible. I know there are times where sometimes a serial number is rubbed off, or you can't find it. It's on a huge piece of equipment. It's on the bottom in the back or something. You can type in the model and you can find your equipment that way, or the manufacturer. So really, there are so many fields that make it very easy to track. So that's that.
Thank you for that plug. And thank you for your time. Jake has a zombie checkout center for items that are decommissioned.
Oh,
Yes.
nice. We used to have the graveyard. In our old version, we called it the graveyard. That was a pretty scary area.
All right. If no further questions, no further discussions, thank you all for joining us. And special thanks to Jake, Cecile, and Colleen for sharing their stories and the time that you put into your presentations. We really appreciate it. We will be sending out a recording of today's presentation as well as yesterday's session on Monday, this upcoming Monday. And as a reminder, we do have a new release, July 2021 release, and we're running a summer special, 25% off all products, adding products, including all modules and moving to hosted. Email your account managers or email support@webcheckout.net for details. Thank you again, everyone. Really appreciate spending this time with you all. Have a great rest of your week. Have a great summer. And if you need anything from us, you know where to find us. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.